Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to learn Finnish with Harry Potter as an absolute beginner. So if you know zero Finnish or just a few words of Finnish, this video is for you. And this will be the first video in a two-part series. So in the second video, I'm going to talk about how to use Harry Potter to learn Finnish if you're an upper beginner or lower intermediate learner, because the process does change as you know more Finnish. But this video is if you know zero Finnish. And as I walk you through this process, you're probably not going to believe that it's possible, because you're going to read the chapter that I recommend that you read first, and you're going to think, how am I supposed to learn all this magical vocabulary? There's way too many words in this chapter, and it's going to boggle your mind that was conditioned to learn through a very theoretical education process. So this is a very practical approach. If you want to take a theoretical approach and dissect all the vocabulary and grammar, this YouTube channel probably isn't for you. So I took a very practical, immersive approach to learn Finnish. So that's what I'm going to walk you through. And I'm going to tell you everything I did from A0 Finnish up to A2, roughly A2.5 where I am now. I'm about halfway between A2 and B1, and how I used Harry Potter to get there. And Harry Potter was one of the core methods that I used to learn Finnish up to my current level. So the first thing I did was I got simultaneously the Finnish audio version and the English audio version from Audible of the Viisaisen Kivi, so Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So the first book, both Finnish and English audio. And I would start by listening to the English audio for approximately 5 minutes, just to memorize that part in my head. And then I would switch to the Finnish version for approximately 5 minutes. And this was a very interesting approach. It's very inefficient time-wise because 50% of your time is in English. So you're only getting the benefit of 50% of your time being in Finnish. But it was very effective. I followed this process for 3 months, from September of 2022 to December of 2022. And this took me pretty much to A1 Finnish just by doing this exclusively. And I'm going to tell you later in this video how this process evolved into a more efficient version. So I don't necessarily recommend that you get the English version and the Finnish version and just listen to the audios comparatively, because you are wasting half your time. And how I would do this was, since I had no Finnish, right? I don't even know what they're saying. I don't even know where to stop the audio. Is I would pick a proper noun like Hermione or Hagrid. So if the sentence ended with Hermione, I would know that that's a good reference point to stop. So I would listen to the English audio, and when the sentence ended with Hermione, for example, I would stop there. And then I would listen to 5 minutes of Finnish, wait for Hermione to come up at approximately 5 minutes later, and then I know it's time to stop and I'm in the same place. So when you're doing this process, your proper nouns are your best friend. And Finnish has a lot of, the Finnish version, they did change the names a lot. For example, Tulupaka is Hogwarts, Loihoinen is Slytherin, Korpenkunsi is Ravenclaw, Rokoliko is Gryffindor, and Puskupu is Hufflepuff. And McGonagall is Magarmiva. So it's not that different, but you have to learn these proper nouns, and they will become your best friend in this process. And the good news is that Harry Potter is loaded with proper nouns, so you're going to have a ton of reference points to know where to stop in a sentence. And then one of the really great things about the Harry Potter Finnish version is the translator did a very good job keeping the story to its original form, sentence by sentence. I'm currently reading the Mandarin Chinese version, and it's very different. Entire paragraphs have been reconstructed. There's whole lines of dialogue that were added. So the process becomes a lot more complicated with different languages. So with the Mandarin version, I had to get the Chinese text, machine translate the document in Google Translate, and then read the machine translated version. With Finnish, you're very lucky. You don't have to do anything complicated. Generally speaking, the Finnish and the English will align sentence by sentence. So it's a very good language to do this process with. Now, this process of doing 5 minutes English, 5 minutes Finnish, it did work for a while because you know you're not going to lose too much information in 5 minutes. And this process does have the benefit of you're listening very hard on the Finnish side. You're trying to intuit what goes where. For example, in the 4th chapter, The Keeper of Keys, Hagrid says, "Harry, you're a wizard." So when you get to that part in the English version, you're listening very hard on the Finnish side. What is that going to be? Harry, sinä olet velho. And now, once you know that sentence, maybe that's not the most practical sentence, but sinä olet, you are, that part of the sentence is going to appear in so many other parts of the story and other parts of other audiobooks that you eventually get to. So when you do this process, you're getting pieces to the puzzle that you can apply to other parts of the story. So that's my first somewhat inefficient version that I did for 3 months. And then I discovered a much more efficient version. And the much more efficient version is reading the English version while listening exclusively to the Finnish audio. So I simply got the English version from Kindle. You might have a physical copy. You could get it from your library. Every library will have Harry Potter. So get the English version. You can probably get it for free. And then take your Finnish audio and listen to it while following along with the English text. So with this more efficient process, you get the benefit of listening to Finnish 100% of the time. But you have to be careful that you're also paying attention to the sounds of the language while you're reading the text. Because if English is your native language, you can get very lazy and just read the text while you're listening to these strange noises, right? Because when you're an absolute beginner with Finnish, it's just going to sound like a noise to you. So you're not going to be listening very hard. This is supposed to be this, or that's supposed to be that. So you have to be very careful that you don't completely space out and you're not just reading. So read somewhat, right? Like compartmentalize your brain so 50% of you is reading and the other 50% is trying to intuit what the sounds mean. So with this process, this more efficient process, once again, the proper nouns are your best friend. When you're an absolute beginner at Finnish, you will lose your place. You might even get several sentences off. I remember that I sometimes even got an entire paragraph off. So don't worry about that. Don't worry if your eye is looking on one sentence, but the audio is 3 sentences ahead. That's going to happen. Your brain is not going to know exactly where you're supposed to be at all times. But after reading the same chapter over and over again, your brain will intuit exactly in the sentence where you're supposed to be. And once again, the proper nouns are your best friend, Tulupaka, Hogwarts, Hagrid, Dumbledore. When you see those names and places, you know exactly where you're supposed to be in the text. So these are your placeholders. Now for the hardest part of this process. The hardest part of this process isn't going to be doing the actual thing. It's going to be, how do I know if this is working for me? So what you have to do is you have to understand that this is a very practical approach to Finnish. You're immersing yourself in the Finnish audio, and you're in the Finnish universe. And this is going to go against your mind, which is most likely trained from a theoretical approach, which comes from the the traditional classroom-based educational system. So think back to elementary school when you had pages and pages of multiplication and division problems. With multiplication, you have to know where to put the zero placeholder if it's multiple digits, and you just did them over and over again with homework, just day after day, all the way until the end of the year, with no concept of where you'd apply this information. And then division, you had to learn to guess how many times does 8 go into 17, 2 times 8, 17 minus 16. So great, you know how to multiply and divide, but you have no idea where to apply this knowledge. So this is going to most likely will go against your fundamentals-based approach, where you're doing something very hard at first. And you have to understand that your brain is designed to absorb languages. This goes back to our hunter-gatherer days. Your brain is meant to absorb this knowledge. Your brain will build a model of the language, and then once your brain builds the model, it will start to fill the vocabulary in. So the hardest part of this process will be trusting yourself to take a very practical approach to learn Finnish. So how do I know that this is working? So what you're going to do is I recommend that you start with Chapter 4, The Keeper of Keys, which I have right here. The Finnish version is Avainten Vati Neljäs Luku, which is Chapter 4. And the reason why I recommend you start with Chapter 4 is because the first chapter, Chapter 1, it changes scenes a lot. First, Uncle Vernon's getting ready for work. Dudley is throwing cereal at the wall, and then he's driving to work. In his rearview mirror, he sees the cat reading a map, which is Professor McGonagall. And then he's at Grunnings, and he sees some weird cloaked people talking about Harry. And then he's coming home, he's watching the news. And then it ends with McGonagall, Dumbledore, and Hagrid delivering Harry as a baby to the front doorstep. So there's a lot of changes of scenes. There's a lot of introductory information to grasp, and it's not the best for learning Finnish. It's an overload of information. So I recommend you start with Chapter 4, The Keeper of Keys, because the scene is entirely contained within one place. It's contained in the hut on the rocks on this little island. There's a lot of dialogue, and the subject is primarily focused on one thing. Harry, you're a wizard. It's a very iconic chapter. It's very easy to remember. And the best part is the audio version in Finnish is exactly 30 minutes. So if it's exactly 30 minutes, you can keep track of your time. So what you can do is if you can commit 30 minutes a day, I'm going to read this one chapter once per day, you'll know that if you go on a certain number of days, 7 days times 30 minutes, I spent 3.5 hours learning Finnish through Harry Potter. So that's one benefit of starting with Chapter 4. Now you can skip ahead and read many other chapters to this process. I recommend that you stick with 1 or 2 chapters, depending on how much time you can allocate, and just repeating those same chapters. What I did originally with my 5 minutes of English, 5 minutes of Finnish process, which I later abandoned after 3 months, was I was reading the entire books. I binge read through the Viisaisen Kivi, the Sorcerer's Stone in a few days, and then I read the entire Chamber of Secrets in 2 days. So extensive versus intensive, you definitely need both. It's not one or the other. At the beginning of your language journey, it's more important to go intensive, so the vocabulary and the sentence structure really drills into your brain. But as you get on later on, which I'll expand upon in part 2 of this video, it's more important to switch to extensive learning. But for the purposes of you not knowing very much Finnish, it's really important that you just stick to 1 or 2 chapters. Or if you have a ton of time, let's say you have 3 hours to allocate per day, which is what I have. I've been allocating roughly 2.5 to 3 hours a day for the past year. So if I have that much time, I could probably read 4 chapters of Harry Potter in a day. So just stick to the chapters you like and keep reading them. So how long will this process take? It really depends how much time you're willing to allocate. If you're willing to allocate just half an hour per day, it might take you 2 months for the language to really start coming to you. If you're willing to do an hour per day, so if you're willing to read the same chapter twice in a day, or read 2 different chapters in one day, then it might come to you in as little as a month. And I don't mean you'll be able to speak Finnish or you'll be able to form sentences on your own, but you will be able to understand a little bit of what's going on with Harry Potter if you keep doing this process day after day, week after week. And it's going to take about 3 weeks for you to trust yourself and know that this process is working. What's going to happen is you're probably going to go home. You're going to get very excited. You're going to get the learning resources. And then after a few days of doing this, you're going to think this is way too complicated for me. And you're going to go back to the apps. You're going to go back to the textbooks, do that for a while, and then come back to this and realize it's just as hard as it was before. So the hardest part will be breaking through that first 3 weeks to the point of where you trust yourself in taking a very practical approach and undoing this theoretical education model that you've most likely grown up to learn with. In the last part of this video, I want to talk about why Harry Potter is so good to learn Finnish. And the main reason why Harry Potter is so good is because most likely you're already familiar with the story. Even if you just watched the movies and didn't read the books and the movies pretty much follow each other storyline-wise. The movies left out a lot of things, like, for example, Professor Binns didn't get any screen time. But for the most part, they follow each other very well. So even if you didn't read the books, you can intuit what's going on just by knowing the movies. So knowing what's supposed to be happening in the story, if you know zero Finnish, will help you intuit new vocabulary through context. So for example, Hagridin Mörki, which means Hagrid's hut. So Hagrid's hut is a place where all 3, Harry, Hermione, and Ron, they go to all the time. So it's a very iconic location. So you can intuit just by these 2 words that Mörki means cottage or hut, which is very important to Finnish culture because Mörki is also the Finnish summer houses that most Finns spend a huge part of their summers in. So that's one example of intuiting vocabulary. Another example is Kielletty metsä. So Kielletty metsä is forbidden forest. And you know this from the movies and the books. So you'll probably know metsä is forest because forest is very close to the Finnish soul. But you won't necessarily know the word kielletty, forbidden. But since these words are paired together, one's a very familiar word, forest, metsä, you'll automatically intuit that kielletty means forbidden. Another example, komero portaiden alla, cabinet under the stairs. So alla is under, komero is closet or cupboard, and portat is stairs. So just having these 3 words associated with each other and mentioned many times, you start to intuit new vocabulary through context. So this is what makes Harry Potter so much better than other audiobooks that you aren't necessarily familiar with. One question you might have is, does this magical vocabulary really help me? And admittedly, I learned the word for invisibility cloak, näkymättömyysvite, before I learned the Finnish word for money, which is raha. And of course, money is way more important in everyday Finnish vocabulary than invisibility cloak. So I was thinking, I'm spending a lot of mental energy getting all these magical terms that may never apply anywhere else. But then it always surprised me how these magical terms came into play somewhere else, even in their root form. So with näkymättömyysvita, näkymä means view. So if you're on a hike and you're talking about a view, näkymä is a very important term that comes up a lot. So just invisibility cloak actually became very useful. Another example would be puhdasverinen, so pure blood. No one's ever going to talk about pure blood in real life, but puhdas is pure, veri is blood. So with this one nonsense magical term, you're already learning two useful words in Finnish. Another example is laitare 9 ja 3/4. So platform 9 3/4. Platform is a useful word because train station platform. And the numbers are very useful. You'll also get the numbers from the names of the chapters. Neljäs luku, chapter 4. And with platform 9 3/4, 3/4, you already know how to say fractions. So a lot of these really specific place names and magical vocabulary will help you intuit things down the road. Okay, so the last part is where to get these resources, which I touched upon a little bit. You can get the Finnish audio from Audible, and you can also get it from Elisa Kirja. So I'll put the links in to where you can get these standalone Finnish audiobooks, and I'll show you where to get the English text as well. I got it from Kindle. There's also some other places where you can get it. You can also get it from Elisa Kirja. So I'll put the links in the description of where you can get it. And as an absolute beginner, you don't need the Finnish version. The Finnish version is for when you're an upper beginner or lower intermediate, which I'll touch upon in the next video. If you already know some Finnish, stay tuned for the next video where I'm going to talk about how to learn Finnish, mostly staying in the Finnish world, and how to integrate new vocabulary. So this process in the next video, part 2, will be a little more Finnish-based, and you'll use some English to integrate new vocabulary. So let me know how this process works for you in the comments, and if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer it. If you have questions on how long it takes, is this better doing it this way? So hope you enjoyed this video. Hope this video helps you learn Finnish, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.